When the Fiat brand first returned to the United States, it did so with the little tiny 500 hatchback. But Fiat quickly had a problem on its hands. It realized Americans didn't want little tiny nimble city hatchbacks. They wanted crossovers, which is why they built this, the 500X. Even though it is also called the 500, the 500X actually rides on a completely different platform than the now discontinued 500. Fiat last updated the 500X in 2019, but we've been sent a 2020 model to review. Let's go ahead and check it out. So let's start off with the styling. Always important when you're talking about any Italian car. It looks a lot like the 500, has a lot of the same styling elements like the headlights and stuff, but it looks like Fiat has just taken an air pump and just pumped up the 500 a couple of times. Because we have the trekking, we have this silver trim down here, makes it look a little bit more rugged and off-roady looking. We also have this Arancio orange paint. Arancio just means orange in Italian, so not the most clever name, but it is a very eye-catching color that is going to draw people to the 500X right away. We've got 18-inch wheels on this model as well, with a black plastic trim around the side. Around here, we've got a very bubbly look here. I like the finish on these silver door handles here. And coming around back, we do have a style that is very reminiscent of the regular 500, which has now been discontinued in America, sadly. That is a vehicle I liked a lot. And I do really like these taillights, which have this orange piece in the middle here. Obviously, that'll be whatever body color you get. It's just a very interesting taillight design that I haven't seen that much of before. Now let's go ahead and check out the interior to see if it is as quirky as the exterior. So if you thought the 500X was quirky on the outside, just wait until you get on the inside, where this Italian meatball just gets even crazier here on the inside. We have the orange paint, which is then matched with this orange trim. I think they used to do this on like the Plymouth Prowler. I think you can get this on like a 911 as well. Some people will love the way this looks. It'll match the exterior color. Other people will think this looks tacky as heck. I'm gonna leave that decision up to you. It does have a practical purpose over here. This big 500 logo over here does lift up for some extra storage in addition to the normal glove box that you're going to get. And there is some very nice materials in here as well. We have a very soft leather steering wheel. It's the same as pretty much every other Fiat Chrysler steering wheel that you'll get in most Jeeps, Dodges, things like that. And the leather that Fiat uses, because we have the Trekking Plus trim, which is the highest trim level, this is some gorgeous Italian leather right here. It's brown, which is not my favorite color, but it has this nice white piping. So very thick, just very nice quality leather. But there is one problem with it. Fiat, make it a little softer, because this is some rock hard leather, and maybe as you drive it along it'll break in a little better, but this is a very, very firm seat that I just didn't find super comfortable driving during the week. And then aside from the nice leather, which covers a lot of the surfaces, the plastics they use aren't that great. They are like soft-ish to the touch, but they just don't look that great. So in terms of material, it's kind of a mixed bag here. Onto the gauge cluster, and I bring this up because it's such a weird gauge cluster. The gauges themselves actually look quite pretty. The typography almost looks like it could come straight off like an Alfa Romeo or a Ferrari with the typeface that they use, just simple white on black gauges. But the speedometer is what I want to draw your attention to, because it moves up in odd increments. It starts at 10 miles per hour, and then it goes to 30, 50, 70, 90. You're already never using any of those numbers, but regardless, it makes it really difficult to see when you're doing exactly 25 or 35 or 40. It's just really weird, and I don't know why Fiat decided to do it that way. You do get a very small helper screen in here that has this sort of matte finish to it, so it doesn't look very high resolution. I've seen better from FCA in the past. Likewise, when we head in here to the middle, the center stack here, you've got this 7-inch Uconnect display. Now, I've said Uconnect praises in past reviews. I've reviewed a bunch of FCA vehicles this year that all have the 8.4-inch touchscreen, which is great. This 7-inch touchscreen is none of those things. So you can see it has this little logo up here. It says 500 and it has a little pair of headphones above it. You know what I would rather have instead of that cute little graphic up here? Another inch on the screen. I don't know why the 500X still has this tiny little basic radio when almost every other Chrysler, Jeep, Ram product gets a bigger, nicer screen. And like the screen in here, it's got this matte finish. So if I open up this sunroof and let some glare in, you're not going to be able to even see what's on the screen. So that's a little bit weird as well. I will mention the sunroof as well. It's sort of an interesting thing. We have an optional extra here. It's a very weird package here. It's called the Customer Preferred Package 22J. Yeah, weird name. Costs about $1,600 and it gets you the Beats audio system, which sounds pretty good, but not as good as some other Chrysler systems I've heard, like the Harman Kardon system. You get this dual pane sunroof, which also has a separate roof that opens in the back. I'll show you that when we get to the back seat. But you also get wheels. You get 18-inch wheels that are 215s. It's a really wide tire for this, and when we get it on the road, we'll see that like that width doesn't really seem necessary for the handling, but more on that a little bit later. We do have an adaptive driver assistance group for about $1,400. That's going to add the adaptive cruise control, things like that. And we have blind spot monitoring and all of those good things. We've got heated seats down here, our dual zone automatic climate controls, and a basic backup camera with trajectory lines. And the only other thing I wanted to show you up here is this little drive mode selector. It's all the way down here, and it's got these little pretty pictures. One has a checkered flag, so I'm assuming that's a race mode. Yep. Sport modes, that's going to tune the all-wheel drive system, the throttle, the steering, things like that, back into auto. Or if you turn it to the right, you have a traction plus mode. So that's going to default the all-wheel drive system to give you a little bit more traction, maybe in inclement weather. So now that we've checked out everything up front on the Fiat 500X, let's go see if it can be a practical vehicle in the backseat. Back here is not a very good story in terms of space. I've got just under 35 inches of legroom, which seems like more than it actually is. As you can see, my knees are definitely touching here. We do have a little cargo net here to put some stuff, and I do have a single USB port, but I couldn't really imagine sitting here in the middle. It's just way too small. The seat back is very uncomfortable, so I wouldn't want to ride back here for any extended period of time. The only good thing that I will say about the back seat here is that I do get my own separate sunroof that I can open and close, so that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and check out the trunk space, which is equally disappointing. Now, the main reason why everybody in America says they want a crossover instead of a hatchback is, oh, they're so practical. Well, I don't know about that with the 500X. You only get just a little bit over 14 cubic feet of space back here. Most of that is taken up by this chintzy cargo cover here. As you can see, we have our camera equipment in here, and I do not have room for anything else. I'm not even 100% sure that you'd be able to get a set or two of golf clubs in here. Now, the seats do fold to open up about 40 cubic feet of space, but that can only be done from the second row. There's no latch to pull them down from back here, making the 500X just a little bit of an inconvenience. All right, so now we're gonna get the 2020 500X out on the road and see how it drives. So I guess the big piece of news here on the 500X front is the new engine under the hood. It used to have a 2.4 liter four-cylinder that was shared in common with a lot of other Fiat Chrysler vehicles, but now it is an all-new 1.3 liter turbocharged engine. So that is a very tiny engine, 1.3 liters. It's actually down 3 horsepower with 177 compared to the 2.4, but it's way up in torque. It's got 210 pound-feet, so it does actually have some good torque, and I'm not finding too much to dislike about this engine. Aside from the noise it makes, it's kind of loud. Most of the time I'm going to go for some acceleration here. And you can see it's just kind of like groany. So I don't love that. I wish it was a little bit more quiet and insulated in here. But all in all, I'd say that the 1.3 feels like an improvement over the 2.4. The problem still remains with this 9-speed automatic transmission. If you watched my Jeep Compass review from a few weeks ago, I had nothing nice to say about this 9-speed automatic transmission. It hunts gears all the time. It never seems to be in the correct gear. You go for a bit of acceleration and the ratios are all over the place. It almost feels like a CVT. It's so laggy and groany. The shifts are so slow and the ratios are so weird. Sometimes it feels like the engine and the transmission are like a bickering married couple that's on the verge of divorce. When the engine wants to go out clubbing, the transmission just wants to stay home and watch Netflix. They just don't ever seem to be on the same page with each other, and it makes driving the 500X in traffic just a little bit annoying, because I'll go for, you know, a quick overtake or something like that, and the engine gets up to speed and everything, and then it takes forever for the transmission to downshift, and by the time it does, the gap's gone and I'm not able to pass anybody. So the reason you'd want to buy a 500X over maybe, say, a regular 500 or another hatchback or maybe another compact crossover like this is that it does come with all-wheel drive as standard, which is pretty good, because a lot of small vehicles, crossovers that this competes against are front-wheel drive based, and they make you pay extra for all-wheel drive, or maybe they don't even offer all-wheel drive at all. Fuel economy with the all-wheel drive and this new 1.3 liter engine is pretty okay. It's pretty on par for what you'd expect a vehicle of this size with all-wheel drive to do. You're going to get about 24 mpg in the city, 26 on the highway, and or 30 on the highway, and about 26 combined, which are okay numbers. The acceleration, not very rapid, about 8.5 seconds to 60 miles an hour. So like I said, it's just not an entirely quick car, and it's a pretty efficient car. But the problem that I've found with it, aside from the transmission, is that they've tuned it to be stiff. When you go over bumps, it's rough. It definitely has like a sport tuned suspension, but then again, the handling's not that great, so it's just a weird overall mix. Oh, listen to that turn signal. It's so loud. Oh, it's bumpy. You know what? I'm done. I've had it. Don't really like driving it, so I'm done. That's the end of the review. All right, I know people are going to be mad at me for that, so I'm going to give the 500X one more shot. Fiat says that they designed the 500X to be fun to drive. So I'm going to get behind the wheel one more time, give it a second chance, and see if this car can make me laugh. In the design brief for this car, Fiat said they wanted the 500X to be a fun to drive car. So I'm gonna drive it in anger just a little bit to see if it stands up to the test of being fun to drive. So remember our drive mode selector from earlier. I'm gonna go ahead and put that into sport mode. I'm gonna toss it into manual mode for good measure, so that this 9-speed automatic doesn't impede on my fun. I've got my little turbo boost gauge showing me my turbo pressure. So let's see, let's take a corner here and oh my God. Okay, if you want the short answer of whether this car is fun to drive, the short answer is going to be a resounding no. Basically, because it has that lifted ride height, it leans over in the corners, and then when you go to set it back up, when the road straightens out, it flops over to the side once again, so you just never feel like you have any stability or control over it. It actually has pretty wide tires as part of a package, so it does grip and set in, but then there's nothing like linear about it, and it just feels like we're about to tip over. Oh my God. I've taken this exact corner in the Jeep Wrangler, and I don't know if it felt this tippy, to be honest. A Mini Countryman with the JCW package will eat this thing's lunch. It'll just walk away from it. A Volkswagen GTI, oh my God, it doesn't even deserve to be in the same league as this. The steering feel isn't really there. That stiff suspension that I talked about in the first part isn't really helping me get around the corners any better. You can eliminate some of the annoyance of this 9-speed automatic by shifting it manually, but there's no paddles, so I'm having to rely on this shifter down here and take my hands off the wheel. So I just can't imagine who this is for. I think if you really want something stylish and quirky and cool and fun to drive with like an interesting looking interior, you're probably better off in a Mini Countryman. So that was the 2020 Fiat 500X Trekking Plus. Now you can get a 500X Pop starting at about $25,000. This Trekking Plus trim is a little more expensive, about $29,000, which I would almost consider a little bit reasonable, but we do have options on this one, bringing the price to over $34,000, and that's just a bit too steep for me. I just didn't see where the 500X excels. It's not roomier than a lot of its other compact or subcompact crossover competitors like the Kia Seltos, Honda HR-V. Those are all just bigger on the inside, nor is it as sporty as a Golf GTI or a Mini Countryman. So I really just don't know where Fiat was going with this one. I think they missed their mark as a city runabout, and I also think they missed their mark as a fun driving crossover. So the 500X isn't for me, but maybe its quirky Italian styling and nice interior will appeal to you. I hope you've enjoyed this video. See you next time.